Hello everybody and welcome to another long take with me, JayEmm. Now for those of you not familiar with the format, this is something I've been trying a couple of times recently and there's a few of you out there that really like it. The setup is dead simple. It's me, it's a few cameras, a microphone and you guys. There isn't going to be an awful lot to see, so please treat this however you like. I know a lot of people that are just listening to this as a podcast and you're not going to miss anything by doing that. If you want to watch my beautiful face and the scenery that we'll see, then please do that as well. But this is going to be probably on the long side, so I'd recommend make yourself a cup of tea, crack open a can of your favourite beverage, however you want to enjoy the video, just sit back, relax, and let's have a bit of a talk. So, today I'm in my E92 M3. If you don't know about this car, go back a few videos on the channel. It's a very nice thing with a very big spec on it, and hopefully I'm going to be tracking it soon, but that is also the subject of another video that I'll be recording later on. However, the E92 is one of those cars that for many people is regarded as a last of line. In its unmodified form, this car was available with a 4-litre high-revving, naturally aspirated V8 and was then replaced with what I've just driven past, the M4 and of course the M3, which had a straight-six twin-turbo 3-litre power plant. And there's an awful lot of people that miss this engine for many reasons, and it is not a perfect engine, but it is still a brilliant one in the mold very much of the old school Ferrari motors, all that kind of stuff. But it, of course, went the way of the dinosaur, like so many engines did. And I've seen a lot of people say, well, why has this happened? You know, this has happened at all ends of the marketplace. You've got supercars downsizing and going turbo. You've got city cars downsizing and going turbo. And, of course, all the stuff in the middle has done it as well. There aren't really many cars left that have a very old-fashioned, naturally aspirated power plant at basically any level. Why did this happen? Well, a lot of people will say, oh, it's emissions. Some people in England will, of course, say, it's the EU. But the reality, I think, is somewhat more complicated. Now, the way that I see it, if Lamborghini and Ferrari can produce 6.5-litre V12 engines with over 7, or in some cases 800 horsepower, and they can get those to meet emissions requirements, clearly that is not the issue. Here's what I think is. I think there's 3 main points, really. Number 1, performance. It is very easy to get a lot more performance out of a turbocharged engine than it is a naturally aspirated one. Anybody that's tried tuning the old S54 lump in the E46 M3 will tell you that in terms of performance per pound spent, or bang for buck if you're watching from the other side of the pond, you don't get an awful return on your investment. Compared with, say, the current M3 or Nissan GTR or basically anything else where a simple remap will net you massive power gains. It's just not an economical way of tuning the car. And of course, when manufacturers need their engines to serve them for, let's say a decade or so, they have to know that they can easily increase the power figure. I mean, look at the GTR as an example. It's gained essentially 100 horsepower over its lifespan with no real changes to the engine's internals. That's just a benefit of doing things the way that they have. And of course, you've also got this one-upmanship that is so prevalent in the industry. For a long time, a lot of manufacturers weren't that worried about having the biggest and the best power figures. When you compare the big 3 from Germany, BMW, Audi, Mercedes, generally speaking, BMW was always the one with the weediest power output, the smallest engine, but it was the best car. Most people preferred it. It was the best handling and all this kind of stuff. Oh, lovely blue Mustang there. I really like that. Anyway, we'll get onto those in a little bit because that is going to be very relevant. Now that everyone is basically going turbocharged, everyone else kind of needs to do it to keep the numbers up, keep the paper numbers up. Real world numbers not so important, but paper numbers very important. It's the same reason that a lot of manufacturers are going all-wheel drive. It's not just drivability in the winter and all that kind of stuff, because in the UK most people don't really care enough about that sort of thing, certainly not with their performance cars. But when you've got these huge 500 plus horsepower levels, if you want to get a decent 0 to 60 time, you're just going to need all-wheel drive. Manufacturers, or more accurately their marketing departments, won't allow their car to be a set amount behind the competition. That's just how it is. Perversely, those same manufacturers probably understate the numbers of some of their own cars because they also don't want the lower models to be quicker than the more expensive, bigger, heavier models. But, you know, that's just how it is. You know, that's life. Got to deal with it. This also works at the lower end as well. Manufacturers used to have a very wide variety of engines of different capacities across their model lineup. Again, see the German example. But what they can do now is have one motor, let's say a 2-litre, and you simply use that engine in 4 different states of tune in place of 4 different motors. It saves an awful lot of money, cuts development costs, means you don't have to keep as many spare parts in, makes manufacturing an awful lot easier. It's better for them all round, really. They just go, okay, yep, here's the one engine and we tune it to this, or this. This happens in other industries as well. It's happened in the computer industry where certain components are identical to their higher performing rivals, but they're just in a lower state of tune. This is nothing new, and it's one of the ways that the car industry is economizing. They are still feeling the pinch, very, very much so, and they got to save the money where they can. I'm coming up to something that my good friend Laurie would absolutely love and is very old school, but you'll see that in just a moment. So that's one big reason, performance. It's very, very important. Now, the second reason has to do with economy figures. Now, I know in the title I say that it's nothing to do with emissions and all this and the other, and I still believe that to be true. However, what is important is the numbers that are produced on paper. We've seen in recent times a lot of examples of manufacturers who have used the fact that the tests that they are put through are not very representative of the real world to basically give you numbers that are very unrealistic, very unattainable. That is the reason that the NEDC cycle, which is how cars in Europe are tested for various things, has been replaced with the new worldwide WLTP protocol, because that is designed to give you more real-world figures. And there's a lot of cars that it turns out actually didn't give you the numbers that they claimed that they would. Look at that thing. Here I am talking about efficiency and modern stuff and whatever, and there's a guy on a steam engine. Lads. So a lot of manufacturers are now getting caught out by the fact that, well, we know that the figures that they claimed weren't achievable. So we're currently seeing an awful lot of change. You get people like BMW and Porsche, among others, have got this new petrol particulate filter, which I'm sure is playing havoc with them, because like any sort of major restriction in the car's exhaust, trying to then keep your performance numbers up and meet all of the new requirements is going to be very much a challenge. Engines and exhausts and intakes and everything are getting increasingly clever and more complex in order to meet stricter and stricter requirements for these things, but with a little bit of engineering cleverness it can still be done. So you have that. We all know that a lot of these engines that claim that they get 90 or 100 miles to gallon or whatever, they really didn't get that. But the point was, people were buying these cars based on the paper numbers. By the time they actually got to learn the fact that the cars didn't do what they claimed, well, it was too late, and the manufacturers didn't really care that much because they'd sold the car. And when everybody else was probably being a bit cheeky and lying and whatever, then not really much of a problem. One manufacturer I'll cite as perhaps being quite forward-thinking is Mazda. You should probably also lump Lexus in with that too, because Lexus never really went too big into the whole diesel thing. In fact, Lexus have spent a lot of money developing hybrid systems, and most of the cars in their lineup now have a hybrid power plant of some sort, and that is really going to help them, because in Europe, well, diesels now are getting pretty unpopular, and definitely combined petrol turbo hybrid systems is where we're going. So that's going to prove to have been a very, very smart move on their part. Mazda, meanwhile, pretty much always declined the idea of Downsizing, the MX-5 still has a naturally aspirated engine, and that's a great engine. And I think, again, their steadfast refusal to go with the crowd, I think, is really going to serve them well. So, well done, Mazda. Well done, you. The third and final reason, because I am going to try and keep this video short, is tax. More specifically, tax and China. You see, all around the world, we have different ways of taxing cars. In the USA, and I'll get onto that in a minute, I know people that have issues with the property tax that's charged on certain cars. You know, anyone in the USA will know about the whole Montana plate thing. If you don't, go and Google it. It's a way of dodging taxes, essentially, in the States. In Europe, we've got many different ways of measuring vehicle tax, and often tax is something that has been culturally very important for cars. For example, in Italy, any vehicle with an engine larger than 2 litres has been subject to a much higher amount of tax. As historically, whether they still do this or not, I don't know, but that's how it always was. This is why you have this great heritage of high-revving, small displacement engines coming from the Italians, Alfa Romeos, Ferraris and whatnot. And Ferrari even had special versions of their cars for the Italian domestic market. There was a 2-litre turbo version of the old Ferrari 308 just because it could get around Italian tax law. It's a big thing. However, anyone that knows anything will tell you that the dominant force in the car world now is China and the Asian markets in general. Now, in China, they also tax their cars based on displacement. And they have different tax levels for different levels of displacement, the highest of which is for the tax bracket 4 litres plus. I think, in reality, that is why you'll find McLaren make a car with a 3.9 litre twin turbocharged engine. Ferrari make a car with a 3.9 litre twin turbocharged engine. It's why they offer the GTC4 Lusso in 2 versions, with the big V12 and the V8 turbo. It's why the new Mercedes lump is 3.9 litre turbo. It's why some of the BMW lumps are 2.9 litres. It's why the Alfa lump is 2.9 litres. That's simply it, because if they had an engine that was that much bigger, the tax penalty is very, very significant. And basically, people over there are buying for very different reasons to what the Europeans and the US would do, and that's simply it, really. If you had a car with a big engine, they are going to charge you a lot more over there. So those are my 3 big reasons why I think the world really went turbocharged. There is, of course, one glorious exception to all of this: the United States. The USA are the exception that proved the rule here, and there's another very simple reason why. American cars don't sell outside of America. Now, I don't mean that Ford and GM and whatnot don't sell outside of America, but simply cars designed more or less for the US domestic market just don't tend to sell abroad. They certainly don't sell here, and for that reason, they don't have to worry about the tax rules in the rest of the world. They can go on having their 6 or 7 litre V8s that drink like fish. It doesn't matter to them. They are their own market. Now, I think that some of the American automakers are really suffering financially because of this, and some of them, of course, are adapting to the times, but many of them are going to steadfastly stay by the fact that, we can sell big V8 pickup trucks to farmers and to basically anyone over there. Everyone buys pickups over there, and it doesn't really matter what the rest of the world thinks, and that's fine. And there's an awful lot of cars that the Americans make that I would love to have a go at. I mean, the Charger Hellcat, for some reason I really like the Charger over the Challenger, I don't know why, but the Charger Hellcat, like, oh yes, give me some of that, please. The C7 Corvette, absolutely love it, wonderful, brilliant car, but they don't make it in right-hand drive, otherwise I probably would have bought one. But hey-ho, there we go. Those are my reasons why I think the world went downsized. Tell me if you think I'm right, if you think I'm wrong, and maybe tell me your favourite examples of old school engines, or perhaps new engines that you think really are showing us that the new way doesn't have to be a bad way. Love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please like, subscribe if you haven't already. It makes a big difference to me and the channel, and we'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.